Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast, and specifically to today's deep dive. I want you to just take a second and imagine something for me.
Oh, diving right in, huh?
Yeah, right into the deep end today. So imagine you are tasked with writing what is honestly probably the most terrifying high-stakes document of your entire life.
Right.
You have to write a tribute to a loved one who has just passed away. A eulogy.
Which is already incredibly daunting.
Exactly. But now, imagine trying to do that while you are experiencing this profound, literally paralyzing cognitive fog, like the emotional exhaustion of acute grief.
It's a heavy scenario. It's really heavy.
It is. You're staring at this blinking cursor.
Right.
And you're trying to distill, decades of a complex, messy human life into a 5-minute speech.
And you're expected to just do it perfectly.
Right. But increasingly, the very first entity that people are speaking to about their dead loved one, the very first thing they consult to write this speech is a machine.
Yeah, and that is a jarring image for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have this deeply ingrained societal expectation. This idea that mourning has to be this entirely organic, completely analog process.
Right, like pen and paper,
Yeah.
sitting by candlelight or something.
Exactly. So the idea introducing a sophisticated algorithm, artificial intelligence, into the sacred space of a funeral, it feels, to a lot of people, just inherently transgressive.
It feels wrong.
Right. You're taking the most raw, visceral human experience imaginable, and you're filtering it through, like, cold, calculating code.
I mean, I feel that visceral pushback immediately. I really do.
Okay.
Like, if I found out my sibling used a large language model, ChatGPT or whatever, to write my mother's eulogy, my very first reaction would probably be a profound sense of betrayal.
Betrayal is a strong word, but yeah, it's common.
It just feels like outsourcing your grief,
Right, right.
But that initial, I guess you could call it an ick factor, that's exactly what we are dismantling in today's deep dive.
Because there's so much more to it than just handing it off to a robot.
Totally. We're pulling insights today from a really fascinating piece. It's called Digital Compassion, Crafting Heartfelt AI Eulogies During Grief. And it was published by the Funeral Program site.
It's a great piece, really thought-provoking.
It really is. And our mission today is to understand why families are doing this, how the technology actually functions in this highly emotional context.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we want to unpack the source material's main argument, which is that treating AI as and I love this phrase, a gentle assistant, might actually be the most compassionate thing we can do for the grieving brain.
Yeah, that reframe is everything. To get past that initial discomfort you mentioned, that feeling of betrayal, we have to fundamentally reframe what is actually being outsourced here.
Right, because you're not outsourcing the feelings.
Exactly. The core argument we're unpacking is that people are not outsourcing the emotion of grief. They aren't outsourcing the love or the memories or the fundamental truth of the relationship they had.
So what are they outsourcing?
They're outsourcing the executive function of syntax.
Okay, wait, explain that. Syntax.
Right, like the grammar, the structure. They are offloading the mechanical burden of structural storytelling at the exact moment their brain is, like, biologically incapable of handling.
Wow, biologically incapable. I want to get into that.
Right.
So let me just give everyone a quick narrative roadmap for what we're doing today.
Sounds good.
We're going to start by looking under the hood of the grieving human brain, right? To understand why that blank piece of paper is so physically paralyzing.
The neurology of writer's block during trauma.
Exactly. Then we'll dive deep into the specific cognitive architecture of large language models. Like, how do they bypass that emotional firewall to make sense of our fragmented memories?
Which is fascinating on a technical level.
It really is. And then we'll explore the art of prompting. Plus, the crucial need for human friction to avoid what we're going to call the uncanny valley of text.
Oh, I love that term. The uncanny valley of text.
Right. And finally, we'll get into the ethical and accessibility arguments that suggest this tech is actually a massive democratizing force.
It's a phenomenal intersection of cognitive science, computational linguistics, and deeply personal ritual.
It really is. So let's start with the human side of that friction, okay? The paralysis of the blank page.
Let's do it.
The premise here in the source text is that writing a eulogy isn't just hard because you're sad. It's a massive task assigned during a state of acute cognitive impairment.
Yes, acute cognitive impairment is exactly right.
I really want to talk about the distinction between the presence of a memory and the organization of that memory.
Right, because there are two very different things in the brain.
Exactly. Because when someone dies, it's not like you forget them. You don't have a lack of memories. Often it's the exact opposite, right?
That is the cruel irony of acute grief.
Hmm.
The memories are overwhelmingly present. The
Yes.
source material from the funeral program site notes how incredibly vivid these fragments become. Like you might suddenly remember the exact texture of their winter coat from 1998.
Or the smell of their car.
Right. Or the highly specific asymmetrical way they smiled when they were trying not to laugh at a joke.
Yes, those tiny, hyper-specific things.
Exactly. Because your limbic system, which is the emotional center of your brain, is absolutely flooded.
It's just redlining.
Completely. It is working in overdrive, flashing these incredibly intense, high-definition snapshots of the person you lost.
It reminds me of a puzzle. I was thinking about an analogy for this.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's like having 1,000 beautiful, pristine puzzle pieces of someone's life, and they're just dumped onto the floor in front of you,
I like this.
right? Every single piece is precious. You recognize every single one of them. You know, there's the smile, there's the coat, there's the laugh.
Yeah.
But grief has completely stolen the picture on the box.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
You have all the raw materials, but you have absolutely zero structural reference for how they connect. Like, you don't know where the corner pieces are. You don't know what the horizon line looks like.
And that lack of a reference picture, that's not just a metaphor. That is a physiological reality in the brain.
Wait, really? Like, physically?
Yes. When the limbic system is flooded by the trauma of a major loss, the amygdala essentially hijacks the brain's resources.
The amygdala hijack. I've heard of that.
Right. And what happens is, this draws energy away from the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, and the prefrontal cortex does what?
That's the part of your brain responsible for executive function. It handles sequencing, logic, working memory, and crucially for what we're talking about today, narrative composition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the biological hardware required to write a coherent beginning, middle, and end. It is literally powered down to deal with the trauma.
That is wild. So you are basically being asked to become a historian, a master storyteller, and a public speaker
All at once.
all at once in the exact window of time when your biological capacity to sequence information is at its absolute lowest.
Precisely. And that's why the inability to write that speech isn't a failure of devotion.
It doesn't mean you didn't love them.
Exactly. It isn't a sign that you didn't love them enough to find the right words. It is literally a systemic neurological overload.
Which really casts the terror of the blank page in a completely different light, you know?
really does.
Like, writers talk about the intimidation of the blank page all the time. Even on a sunny Tuesday when everything is totally fine, staring at a blank document is scary.
Absolutely.
But when you add the weight of finality to it, when this blank page represents the final public summation of a human being's existence,
It's unbearable.
and your prefrontal cortex is offline, that is genuine paralysis.
And this is the exact vulnerability that the source material addresses. The introduction of the AI model into this space is designed specifically to break that paralysis.
to give you the picture on the box.
Exactly. The machine steps in to provide the scaffolding. It puts the first drop of ink on the page so the grieving individual doesn't have to initiate the sequence from absolute zero.
So, okay, if the human brain is effectively hitting a firewall because of this limbic hijack, what is the specific cognitive architecture of a large language model that allows it to bypass that?
Good question.
Because we throw around terms like AI synthesis, right?
Mm.
But for you listening right now, you know, maybe you know what ChatGPT is, but you haven't really thought about how it maps to grief.
Right, how it actually functions mechanically.
Yeah, like the source mentions feeding the AI tiny fragmented inputs. Things like, she loved gardening, or he had a quiet strength. How does the machine translate those little shards into an actual narrative?
So to understand the mechanics of this gentle assistant, we have to look at how large language models process concepts in what we call high-dimensional vector spaces.
Okay, vector spaces. We're getting into the math.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's important. An LLM doesn't understand grief or gardening the way you or I do. It has no feelings.
Right.
What it understands is semantic proximity.
Semantic proximity, meaning how close words are to each other.
Essentially, yes. When you input a phrase like quiet strength, the model maps that phrase mathematically. In all its massive training data, quiet strength is frequently situated near concepts like resilience. It's near concepts like unshakable support, calmness in a storm, deeply rooted foundations.
So it knows the conceptual neighborhood of the phrase.
Exactly. It knows the neighborhood. And when you add the fragment, she loved gardening, the model uses its attention mechanisms.
Wait, attention mechanisms?
Yeah, those are the parts of the AI that weigh the importance and relationships of different words in a prompt.
Okay, got it.
So it uses those to find the semantic intersection of quiet strength and gardening.
Oh, wow.
It mathematically understands that a garden requires patience. It
Huh.
involves nurturing life over time. It knows there is a profound, quiet resilience in tending to living things through different seasons.
I completely see where this is going. The AI isn't just stringing together predictive text like guessing the next word on your phone's keyboard.
No, it's much more sophisticated than that.
It's architecturally mapping the metaphor.
Yes.
If I just say, she liked gardens and she was strong, the AI can synthesize a passage about how her love for her garden was a reflection of how she nurtured her family,
Exactly. Patiently, quietly, weathering the storms.
making sure those around her had what they needed to bloom. Wow.
It connects the puzzle pieces for you. It uses the patterns of human storytelling that it was trained on to build out the architecture.
And what does that architecture usually look like?
Well, the source notes, it typically drafts an introduction, establishing the tone,
Yeah.
then a thematic body section integrating those specific fragments, like your gardening metaphor.
Right.
Then it adds personal reflections, and usually a concluding message of hope or continuity. It takes your raw emotional thread and weaves it into a recognized structural format.
Okay, I understand the vector math of it. It makes sense. But this is where I get hung up.
Okay, lay it on me.
If the machine is relying on its training data to find these semantic intersections, isn't the resulting text just an amalgamation of every generic eulogy ever written?
The cliche problem.
Right. If millions of people have used the gardening as nurturing metaphor, doesn't the AI just spit out a highly polished, grammatically perfect Hallmark card?
That's a very valid concern.
Like, how do we avoid generating a tribute that feels like it could be read at literally anyone's funeral?
That is the central tension of using this technology. And it's a friction that the source text from the funeral program site spends a lot of time on.
Because nobody wants a generic goodbye.
Exactly. But here's the key. The goal of that first AI generation is rarely to produce the final pristine draft.
Oh. It's not supposed to be the final version.
No, not at all. The psychological relief we talked about earlier, bypassing the blank page,
Right.
isn't that the machine hands you a masterpiece and you just hit print.
Right.
The relief is that it gives you something to react to.
Something to react to. Okay.
Because it is infinitely easier for a fatigued, grieving brain to edit a cliche than it is to invent a masterpiece from thin air.
Wait, so the generic nature of the output is actually a feature, not a bug?
In a way, yes,
Yeah.
because humans are fundamentally reactive creatures.
Okay, I think I see what you mean.
Think about it. If the AI writes a beautifully structured but slightly hollow paragraph about how she patiently tended her garden, the family member reading it will experience an immediate corrective reaction.
Oh, they'll read it and go, well, no, it wasn't just a garden.
Exactly. They'll think it was her prize-winning, violently red heirloom tomatoes, and she used to talk to them aggressively to encourage them to grow.
That's hilarious. And so true. The cliche triggers the specific human memory.
Yes, the AI's generic placeholder highlights exactly what is missing, and that forces the human to recall the idiosyncratic detail.
So it's a collaborative process.
Entirely collaborative.
Yeah.
The AI provided the syntax, the pacing, and the metaphorical framework.
Hmm.
The human then goes in and injects the grit, the weirdness, the highly specific texture of that unique life.
You're using the machine for the heavy lifting of the structure.
Right, but you are enforcing your own human truth over the top of it.
That really reframes the whole interaction for me. It's not a ghostwriter, it's a sparring partner.
A scarring partner is a great way to look at it.
Which brings us to the actual art of prompting. Because the source text is adamant about this. You cannot just throw a few bullet points at the prompt box and expect a miracle.
No, you definitely cannot.
You have to guide the model with extreme intention.
Yes, the quality of the output is inextricably linked to the intentionality of the input. You are not just feeding the modern facts, you are establishing the parameters of its vector space.
Meaning you have to tell it how to behave.
Exactly. You have to dictate the tone, the perspective, and the relational context.
The relational context seems like the most crucial variable here.
It absolutely is.
The text emphasizes specifying whether the eulogy is coming from a parent, a sibling, a spouse, or a friend. How does shifting that relational input change the way the LLM weighs the information?
It drastically alters the semantic neighborhood the model draws from.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, the linguistic patterns a sister uses to describe her brother are fundamentally different from the patterns a daughter uses to describe her father.
Right, of course.
If you tell the model, I am his younger sister, the attention mechanisms will prioritize tones of shared history.
Like childhood mischief.
Exactly. Childhood mischief, parallel growth, and perhaps a more conversational familiar warmth.
They grew up on the same level.
Right. But if you tell the model, I am his daughter, it shifts the vector entirely. It moves toward themes of guidance, protection, legacy, and generational impact.
Because going back to that quiet strength phrase,
Yep.
it means something totally different to a younger sister than it does to a daughter.
Exactly.
Like to the sister, his quiet strength might have been how he handled their parents' divorce when they were kids.
Yes.
But to the daughter, his quiet strength might have been how he stayed up late helping her with math homework without ever complaining.
Right. The prompt anchors the AI to the correct emotional frequency.
That is so powerful. And the most fascinating evolution of this process, and something the source material highlights as a major benefit, is how AI can synthesize multiple disparate perspectives at once.
Yes, a crowdsourcing aspect. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
I was just thinking about this. A human life is entirely multidimensional, right?
We all wear many hats.
Exactly. The person you are to your spouse is not the person you are to your drinking buddies,
Definitely not.
which is not the person you are to your grandchildren. But traditionally, a funeral relies heavily on a single narrative viewpoint.
Which is usually just whichever family member is the bravest or the least paralyzed by grief standing at the podium.
Right. And that inherently flattens the life of the deceased.
It does. The single author has to either ignore the facets of the person they didn't know well, or they have to frantically call around to coworkers and distant relatives trying to cram secondhand anecdotes into their own speech.
Which sounds narratively chaotic.
And completely exhausting.
I was trying to think of an analogy for how the AI solves this multi-perspective problem.
Let's hear it.
The text talks about crowdsourcing memories, right? Putting in the stoic brother's notes, the rebellious daughter's memories, the former business partner's emails. So if the traditional method is like trying to play every instrument in the orchestra by yourself, using the AI is less like an orchestra and more like a mechanical loom.
Okay, walk me through the loom.
So think of all these different family members and friends as individual threads of yarn.
Okay.
The brother provides a rough, heavy wool thread of a story. The daughter provides a brightly colored, fragile silk thread. The business partner provides a stiff, formal cotton thread.
Oh, yeah.
If a single grieving human tries to weave those together, you usually just get a tangled knot. It doesn't flow.
Because they don't have the cognitive bandwidth to sort it out.
Right. But the LLM acts as the mechanical loom. You feed it all these disparate textured threads, and it has the structural capacity to weave them into a single cohesive tapestry.
That's a beautiful way to visualize it.
It maintains the distinct color of each person's memory, but it aligns them into a unified pattern that actually makes sense as a speech.
That is a highly accurate representation of how the model's context window operates.
The context window.
Yeah, the context window is essentially the amount of text the AI can process and remember at one time.
Okay.
By feeding it all these different perspectives simultaneously, you're asking the attention mechanisms to find the thematic through lines that connect them all.
Oh, I see. So it connects the brother's wool thread to the partner's cotton thread.
Exactly. It might recognize that the brother's story about him fixing a broken bicycle and the business partner's story about him saving a failing corporate merger. They both point to a core personality trait.
Relentless problem solving.
Exactly. Relentless problem solving. It finds the narrative bridge between the disparate parts of a person's life.
It really democratizes the memory of the person.
It ensures that the final tribute is a holistic reflection of the individual, not just the narrow slice experienced by the one person holding the microphone.
It brings a level of comprehensiveness that is incredibly difficult for a single grieving human to achieve. But, and this is a big but, even with a masterful prompt and even with a beautifully woven tapestry of multi-perspective memories, the first draft is still fundamentally machine-generated.
Yes, it is.
Which brings up a critical warning from the source text, and this is about the absolute necessity of the human touch to avoid what I want to call the uncanny valley of text.
The uncanny valley is a perfect framework for this.
I think most people know it visually, right?
Yeah, visually we know the uncanny valley is that unsettling feeling when a robot or a CGI character looks almost human.
But something is just off.
Right. Something in the micro-expressions is slightly wrong, making it deeply creepy.
It gives you the shivers, so how does that apply to text?
In text generation, particularly with highly emotional subjects, The uncanny valley manifests through tone and rhythm.
I can imagine sitting in the pew at a funeral, listening to someone read an AI-generated speech and suddenly feeling a weird disconnect.
Because the grammar is flawless, the structure is perfect, but
But it just doesn't sound like the person delivering it. And it doesn't sound like the person in the casket.
exactly. The default state of most large language models is optimized for clarity, neutrality, and a sort of elevated academic polish.
It inherently wants to sound proper.
It does. If left unchecked, the model will often gravitate toward overly formal language.
It's going to use the word magnanimous.
Oh, it absolutely will. It loves words like that. It will generate a sentence like, "Furthermore, her magnanimous spirit was a beacon of illumination for all who crossed her trajectory."
Ugh. And you are giving a eulogy for a woman whose favorite activity was drinking cheap beer on the porch and whose catchphrase was, "Be a good egg."
Yeah,
The word magnanimous is going to echo through that funeral home like a gunshot.
it really is.
It instantly shatters the authenticity of the moment. It broadcasts to the entire room that the words are not your own.
And this is why the source material from the funeral program site is so adamant. They state over and over that the AI generation is merely a foundation. The collaborative editing process is non-negotiable. You have to edit it.
And the specific mechanism the text suggests for editing is so practical, but crucial. You must read the text aloud.
That makes total sense, because a eulogy is fundamentally an oral tradition.
Right. It's meant to be spoken into the air to a room full of breathing people. Written language and spoken language are entirely different beasts.
They really are. When you read a text aloud, your physical body becomes the filter.
Your body catches the mistakes the AI made.
Yes, you will naturally stumble over the robotic phrasing. Your breath will run out if the AI has generated a sentence with too many clauses.
Because AI doesn't need to breathe.
Exactly. And you will feel the artificiality of a word like magnanimous in your mouth, and you will naturally substitute it with your own vernacular.
So you read, "Furthermore, her magnanimous spirit," and you just stop, cross it out, and write, "Mom was a good egg."
Exactly. Reading it aloud highlights the delta, the gap between the machine's syntax and your authentic human voice.
You strip away the academic polish.
You strip it away, and you replace it with the gritty, rhythmic reality of human speech. That friction between the spoken word and the written draft is where the soul is injected back into the process.
I love that. The friction is where the soul lives.
Yes.
Which leads us to a fascinating philosophical juncture in this deep dive.
Yep.
If families have to spend all this time prompting the machine, reviewing the output, experiencing the uncanny valley, and then heavily editing the text to make it sound human anyway,
Oh.
why are we doing this?
That's a fair question. Why involve the machine at all if you have to do so much work?
Exactly. And this brings us to the profound ethical and accessibility arguments presented in the source text. Who is actually benefiting from this the most?
To answer that, we really have to look past the demographic of people who are already comfortable with writing and public speaking.
Right, because for a confident writer, the AI might just be a time-saving convenience.
Yeah, a shortcut. But the source material pivots to a much more vital argument. AI is a profound equalizer.
The accessibility angle completely changed how I viewed this entire topic. I mean,
Yep.
completely.
It's the most important part of the conversation, I think.
The text explores how AI assists individuals who struggle with language barriers, learning disabilities, or just debilitating emotional exhaustion.
Consider the massive amount of gatekeeping around eloquence in our society.
Oh, man. So true.
We equate the ability to deliver a beautifully structured, grammatically perfect speech with the depth of a person's love.
Like, if you give a good speech, you loved them more.
Right. But linguistic ability and emotional depth have absolutely zero correlation.
None. Think about a first-generation immigrant, right? Let's say a daughter is tasked with memorializing her father. Her conversational English is fine, but she lacks the vocabulary to confidently write a formal public address in her second language.
That's a huge barrier.
In the past, she might have chosen to remain silent. Or she might have deferred to a more fluent relative who didn't know her father as well, simply because the linguistic barrier was too high.
Exactly. Or consider an individual with severe dyslexia.
Oh, yes.
The mere act of writing a paragraph causes them intense anxiety and frustration on a normal good day. Now, they're being asked to summarize a 60-year life in front of 200 grieving people.
The cognitive load is just staggering.
It really is.
Or Frankly, just think about the spouse who has spent the last month sleeping in a rigid chair next to a hospice bed.
Yeah, the caretaker exhaustion.
They are operating on the zero sleep. They're completely depleted, physically and emotionally shattered. The thought of opening a laptop and staring at a blank Word document is literally impossible.
In all of these scenarios, the barrier to participation isn't a lack of devotion. It's not that they don't care.
Right.
It is a purely mechanical, logistical barrier.
Yeah.
The LLM removes that barrier.
It levels the playing field.
It does. It allows the immigrant daughter to input her memories in her native language or in broken English, and the model translates and structures it into a dignified, fluent tribute.
And for the dyslexic son,
It allows him to speak his fragmented memories into a voice-to-text prompt, letting the AI handle the terrifying mechanics of spelling and syntax.
and it gives that exhausted spouse a structured starting point so they don't have to carry the entire cognitive weight of the memorial alone.
It fundamentally uncouples the articulation of love from the mechanics of writing.
That is such a powerful sentence. It uncouples the articulation of love from the mechanics of writing.
It gives a voice to people who, historically, would have just sat in the back row in silence while someone else did the talking.
The depth of the tribute can finally be measured by the depth of the memories, not the depth of the speaker's vocabulary.
Yes, and that completely neutralizes the ethical criticism of outsourcing your grief.
It really does, because you're not outsourcing grief.
We don't accuse families of outsourcing their love when they hire a florist to arrange flowers they didn't grow,
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point.
We don't accuse them of disrespect when they hire a mortician to care for the body in ways they are not trained to do.
Funerals have always relied on tools and specialists. Always. They handle the logistical burdens of death, allowing the family to focus on the emotional reality. Using an LLM to handle the syntactic logistics of a eulogy is simply the next evolution of that exact same principle.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Yeah.
You are delegating the structural labor, not the emotional core.
Exactly.
So, okay, once we have this perfectly prompted, heavily edited, deeply authentic, and highly accessible eulogy text, where does it go?
It doesn't just stop at the podium.
Right, because the source text from the funeral program site emphasizes that the spoken speech is only one piece of the puzzle. It talks about a multidimensional tribute and holistic design.
Because a modern memorial is rarely just an oral presentation anymore.
It's a whole event.
It is a multimedia environmental experience. You have the printed funeral programs, digital slideshows, audio selections, and the physical staging of the service itself.
And the text points out that the AI can act as the connective tissue for all of these elements.
Yes, the connective tissue. Like, if you have spent all this time refining a eulogy that focuses on a central metaphor, like our example of the resilience of a gardener, the AI can help synthesize the rest of the memorial around that theme.
It creates narrative cohesion. The model can analyze the final text of the eulogy and suggest complementary elements for the printed program.
Like what?
Well, it might suggest a specific poem about the changing of the seasons to be printed on the back cover.
Oh, nice.
Or it might recommend transition phrasing for the efficient to use between the eulogy and the visual slideshow, making sure it ties back to those core themes of gardening and growth.
So it's about ensuring that the entire experience feels intentionally designed to reflect the specific shape of the life that was lived.
Exactly.
The resources provided by the source site emphasize combining this AI-assisted writing with high-quality visual design.
For matching content.
Right. If the eulogy captures a warm, conversational, outdoorsy tone, the printed material shouldn't be cold, formal, and strictly traditional. The AI helps bridge the gap between the written word and the visual representation.
It adapts to the preferences of the family. It ensures that the final physical keepsake, the printed program that people take home and put in a drawer to remember the day.
Yeah, the tangible memory.
It ensures that keepsake resonates with the exact same emotional frequency as the words spoken at the podium.
It empowers families to build a custom architecture of memory, rather than forcing their unique loved one into a pre-packaged, generic funeral template.
Which is what everyone ultimately wants, a personalized goodbye.
Okay, let's step back and unpack everything we've covered today, because we've journeyed through some incredibly complex territory.
We really have.
Yeah.
From neurology to algorithms to ethics.
We started with the very real physiological paralysis of grief, understanding how the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, making the blank page a literal neurological firewall.
And then we examined the computational mechanics of large language models, We broke down how they use attention mechanisms and semantic vector spaces to map those fragmented human memories into recognized narrative architectures.
Right, the semantic neighborhoods.
Exactly. And we saw how they don't replace the human, but rather provide a structured surface for the human mind to react against.
Then we talked about the crucial art of prompting, using the model as a mechanical loom to weave together disparate, crowdsourced threads of memory from multiple family members into a single, cohesive tapestry.
And we confronted the uncanny valley of text, acknowledging that the model's default, academic polish, must be aggressively edited by reading aloud.
Forcing that friction between spoken truth and written drafts to generate authentic emotion. Mom was a good egg, not magnanimous.
Exactly.
And most profoundly, I think, we reframe the ethics of this technology. We move past the knee-jerk reaction of outsourcing grief to see AI as a massive democratizing force.
A tool that removes the gatekeeping of eloquence for those battling language barriers, learning disabilities, or profound exhaustion.
It is, in every sense of the word, a gentle assistant.
It is a tool for emotional articulation. It allows families to construct a holistic, multidimensional tribute that truly honors the complexity of the life lived.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to carry with you after listening today.
Oh, I'm ready.
We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how these models can bypass our cognitive fog to help us perfectly articulate our profound love, respect, and gratitude for someone after they are gone.
Right?
We use the machine to find the exact right words for the eulogy.
Yeah.
But if this technology is so remarkably adept at helping us organize our complex feelings, synthesizing our fragmented memories, and finding the precise semantic weight of our love, why are we waiting for the funeral?
Oh, yeah.
Shouldn't we be using these exact same tools right now to help us express those feelings to our loved ones while they are still sitting across the table alive to hear them?